Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Koen Verbeke. I'm here on behalf of brand compliance to talk a little bit about NIS2, NIS2 directive. I assume a lot of you already received presentations from the CCB in the past few months, so I won't repeat everything that CCB already told, but maybe some key things, requirements, obligations. Some words about me. Some of you I already know from my background at Cranium, where I worked as a CTO for more than 7 years. I recently made a switch to brand compliance. Brand compliance is a certification authority, certification body. We conduct audits to grant a certificate towards an organization. And it can be in terms of quality, it can also be for information security. I'm dividing my time between brand compliance and HOWEST, the University of Applied Sciences in Bruges, where I teach some courses and also do some research. To set the scene, maybe some few numbers. Does anyone have an idea? Oh, it goes quicker than I thought. Does anyone have an idea what these numbers represent? It's not the number of articles in the NIS2 directive. It's not the number of incidents that we encountered. No, it's a representation of days. And NIS2, it was always like in the far future, something that we still don't need to apply to yet. That's not the case. NIS2 went into force the 18th of October 2024, and that's 144 days ago. And there are some other deadlines, that's the other dates, but there are already requirements since the 18th of October that you need to follow since then. So it's not something in the future, it's something that you have to do now. The 7 is 7 days until the registration deadline, that's next week. So I assume that everyone already did this. If not, you have 1 week left to register your organization at the website of the Safe on Web of the CCB. And then the two other numbers, 403, that's more than 1 year, is the 18th of April 2026, and the other one is the 18th of April 2027. These are two major deadlines. The first one is, as an essential entity, you have to achieve a minimal level of maturity in terms of information security. And the ultimate deadline is the 18th of April 2027. And then you have to reach your final level. More on that later. I already told something about essential, but first let's take a step back. Who is in scope of NIS2? Most of you are affiliated with the health sector, so I think you already know this, that you're on the Annex A or on Annex 1, so on the left part side of this slide, the sectors of high criticality. Some are very obvious, transport, energy, banking, financial markets, but also public health in the broad sense of the word. There are also some other critical sectors, and in NIS2, this is the Annex 2. For you, interesting is the manufacturer of medical devices, so they also have to comply with NIS2. So we have the first criterion, and that's which service do you deliver. That's one indicator. The second one is the size of your organization. So you have the service and the size. Together they define which entity you are. You have two types of entities, essential ones and important ones. An essential one, you are essential if you are in one of the sectors of high criticality and if you reach a certain threshold. Other entities are called important entities. There are some exceptions, but I think for most of you, at least if we talk about hospitals, they fall under the first requirement, so they are considered to be an essential entity. What's the consequence? What does it mean to be important or essential? We will see that in a minute. Important is that if you're important, if you're essential, it doesn't really matter. The requirements are the same. And I'm talking now about the NIS2 directive, not about the implementation law. So maybe if you don't know this yet, NIS2 is a European directive. Its directive needs to be transposed into national legislation. This has been done yet for Belgium. In the remainder of my session, I will talk about the implementation law in Belgium. But the requirements are the same for both essential and both important entities. First of all, you need to implement appropriate cybersecurity measures. You need to implement a lot of measures. Secondly, if you are facing a cyber attack, a significant attack, if it's an incident, you need to notify this timely, meaning within 24, 72, within 1 month. There are several thresholds. I won't go too much into that. And finally, it was already mentioned in the intro session, you need to give some training to your management level. What exactly is management? We will also see they also have some responsibilities. So these are the 3 main requirements under NIS2. To demonstrate that you are compliant with NIS2, that's something else. And that's what we see here with the regular conformity assessments. And that's where the Belgian law gives some guidance, some requirements actually how to do that in practice. But both for important and essential entities, these requirements are valid. When we talk about the first requirement, implementing cybersecurity measures, I hope you can read this in the back as well. This is a visual from the CCB. You may have seen it before. These are some basic key measures that you should implement. And it's very straightforward. If you read the directive and even if you read the implementation law, it's not giving much details in the way you implement this. Let's take, for example, the second one, incident handling. It's just stated that you need to do something with incident handling. You need to have a policy, you need to be able to report it, but the way that you do it, you can choose for yourself. That's very important. It's the same for every measure that we see here. You need to give some cybersecurity training, make sure that there is some cyber hygiene, but again, the way that you implement this is up to your organization how to do that in practice. There are a few non-negotiables, for example, multi-factor authentication. We already received information from the CCB that they will be very strict on that. MFA, you need to implement if possible, and of course, where appropriate. And that's maybe relevant for all these measures. It's on the top, it should be appropriate to the risk. We see it in a similar way with the GDPR. GDPR is also risk-based. Here it's also the case. NIS2 is very different from GDPR, so don't compare it too much, but they also follow the same risk-based approach. It should be appropriate and proportionate to the risk that you are facing. The second measure was, or the second requirement was about incident reporting, incident notification. Let's not stick too long on that requirement. The third one is interesting. That's about the management level. What is management? This is a discussion that I've already seen a lot. Management is everyone who has the authority to represent the organization. So it can be the CEO, the CFO, but it's also the board of directors. They also have the authority to represent the company. So they should also be aware of these measures, these requirements. And what does it mean in practice? It was already said, they should follow a training. They should know what it is about. And they should also have some say in, what are we going to implement? Which cybersecurity measures are we going to do? And it's not something that you can leave up to your IT department, IT director. No, it's the whole company, the whole organization, and so the board of directors, the management team, that has to be on board. That's the most important thing about this. This visual is from Squid Game. It's not like a Squid Game that you die anyway in the end, but it's to keep your attention. You have two choices to implement this in practice. And now I'm talking about the Belgian legislation, so how to do this. You have two choices. The first one is the ISO 27001. It's something, I guess, that rings already a bell. The second option is the Cyber Fundamentals Framework. And there are two different views in this. The one is a very recognized framework, and the ISO 27001, it's one that we see a lot already in the world. The other one is coming up. It's the Cyber Fundamentals Framework. It started in Belgium, it's developed in Belgium, but we see that it's making its way across Europe as other countries are also taking over that scheme. And the second one gives a bit more leeway in how to interpret it. There's like a kind of growth path where you start with the basic level and you grow until the essential level. So the first one is more strict, is more international. The second one is giving more room for own interpretation. And it's also something that's very Belgian. Let's take a look at an example now. I'm from West Flanders, I'm from Kortrijk, so I know the scene from the West Flemish hospitals quite well. We have 11 hospitals, and it seems that the choice that had to be made is already made in West Flanders. From these 11 hospitals, 7 of them already chose for the ISO 27001 certification. The other 4, I don't have information what they choose, but the 7 already have the certificate or they are on their way to achieving the certificate. So the choice they made is very clear, but it's important to state it's not because you have your ISO certificate, ISO 27001 certificate, that you're immediately compliant with NIS2. There are a few requirements as well. It has to be the whole organization that is within the scope. So we're looking at a bit of an, I cannot say which organization it is, although this is publicly available on their website, but they chose to list as a scope only the IT processes, which could be interesting, or you could think that it is following the NIS2 requirement, because NIS is about the network and information systems. All IT processes are within this scope description. But this is not okay. This is not enough to assume this organization, this hospital, as NIS2 compliant. So that's the one we see on the left here. Information security related to the ICT processes, and even though all the processes related to IT are in there, this is not okay. It should be the whole organization. So we see here an updated version, information security related to patient data required for diagnosis, treatment and care, as well as the data and visitors with all the hospital processes. This is an example of a phrasing. Of course, other hospitals also present here, they have another phrasing and which processes are in the scope, but it should be the whole organization, so all the processes, primary, giving care, healthcare, supporting, like IT, but not limited to the IT processes. This hospital, by the way, they already acknowledged this, and they are now expanding the scope, and in 2025 they will receive the full scope certification. So I hope this is clear. This is just the example for West Flanders. If we compare it to the other provinces, I don't have enough information, or I cannot disclose, but we see that it's not everywhere the case. So hospitals in Limburg, East Flanders, Antwerp, they may choose for another approach, maybe go for the ISO, for the siphon, and then gradually move to the ISO 27001. But yeah, it's still to be seen how this will develop. You can definitely interrupt me if this is too well known to you, but what is now ISO 27001? These are the requirements for setting up an ISMS, an information security management system. And in essence, it's just stating that you should have a plan, do, check, act system. That's what we see here. It's very easy to understand. You have certain risks within your organization, certain information security risks. You plan something to mitigate these risks. You execute your planning, what you want to do to treat those risks. You evaluate if this is according to plan and if this is actually helping, reducing the risk, and you improve your actions based on your evaluation. That's a very easy understanding of what an ISMS actually is. The ISO 27001 certification standard does not consist only of an ISMS. It consists of an ISMS, the requirements, how to set up an ISMS, and an Annex A, an appendix with a lot of information security controls, 93 in total, and all these controls should be evaluated whether not or whether they should be implemented to help to mitigate your information security risks. And important, you can, as an organization, certify against this standard only the 27001. You also hear about the 27002, the 27005, and these are all guidance standards. They help you in understanding this particular standard, but the certification is against this one. We hear all types of mistakes against this, 27K, 27,000. We have a 27,002 certificate. That's not the case. This is the only one. How does it work in practice now? Such a certification, I have the view of brand compliance as a certification body. If you, as a hospital, want to achieve a certain certificate, you're applying for certification, you come to a certification body. It's important that it's an accredited certification body, like brand compliance is. We are not the only one. There are multiple organizations in Belgium. But why should it be accredited? Because then we have some justification that we are doing everything according to the books. What You could just give a certificate according to, but it doesn't mean anything. So that's what accreditation means. An accreditation body, and then we are on the third step. That's per country, and I think there are 100 countries in total over the world. They have an accreditation body, and they make sure that the certification bodies meet the requirements. So it's in fact the auditor of the auditor. You can see it like that. We have to, as brand compliance, we have to meet all these strict requirements. We also are being audited, and this is quite strict. All the accreditation bodies per country, in Belgium is the BELAC, in the Netherlands is the Raad voor Accreditatie. They are all affiliated with the IAF, and that's an overarching body. Important, the IAF is responsible, or the accreditation body, to make sure that we follow the rules. The actual standards, they are not involved in this. This is something from ISO. And ISO is the International Standards Organization. This particular norm, you see it, there is also the IEC. That's because it was developed together with the International Electronical Commission. So these two organizations, they came up with this 27001. In practice, this is quite a heavy process to undergo such a certification. It's a 3-year audit cycle. It starts with an initial audit, and in practice you have a phase 1 and a phase 2. The phase 1, imagine that it starts this month, March 2025. It's 1 day, 2 days of documentation audit. We check if all the documentation is there, and it can already be a blocking factor if something is not there to not go to the second phase. If everything is okay in stage 1, and you have all the required documentation, you have all your policies, procedures, we move to stage 2. Some critics say that ISO 27001 is just a paper tiger. It's something you have to have a lot of procedures, policies, and that's it. It doesn't really improve your security. Well, I'm not one of the believers, of course, otherwise I wouldn't be working for a certification body, but that's something that we verify in stage 2. We check if all the procedures that you have, all the policies, are they executed in practice? Do you follow them? So are they infringing the standard in itself, or are they infringing your own policies and procedures? So we do some samples, checks, we verify. Time-wise, if stage 1 is 1 day, 2 days, then we see that stage 2 is 3 till 6 days. So it takes some time. After the stage 2, you have some review, certification decision, and then your audit cycle starts. This is valid for 3 years, but it's not like a given, by default it's valid. You still have to do something, and that's a pitfall that you see in a lot of organizations. They rush until certification, and then they stop everything, or they stop a lot of activities. After 1 year, within the first year, you have your surveillance audit. It's a short part of the audit. If you have 6 days in the initial audit, let's say we have 2 days in the first surveillance audit, these are also auditing activities. So if you had some observations, non-conformities in the first audit, make sure that you have solved them in your surveillance audit. Otherwise, it's a reason to pause your certification, to even withdraw it if you really don't do anything. Second year the same, and you have a second surveillance audit, and after 3-4 years you have a recertification, and then a new audit cycle starts. So this is not like a one-time effort, it's a 3-year cycle, and it keeps on going. So when you have the certificate, it's just the beginning, actually. As I told already, brand compliance is a certification body. We are authorized, well, like they call it, conformity assessment body, but it's the same certification body. We are authorized to perform assessments in Belgium to check if an organization is compliant with NIS2. And if you have an ISO certificate, it means that you are presumed to be compliant as long as, of course, all your activities are within the scope, and as long as you have, it would lead us too far, but you have a statement of applicability with all your controls, that the most of your controls are implemented. Because it doesn't make sense if you exclude everything and then you're still saying we're NIS2 compliant, because NIS2 has some clear measures, some clear basic measures that these are the 11 that we already saw. We are not the only one. There are 8 in total, I think, in Belgium that can do this. Voilà. The list can be found on the website of CCB. That's the first option. The ISO 27001, very clear, very strict, and not suitable for everyone. The other option is the Siphon Cyber Fundamentals Framework. It's developed by our own Belgian Center of Cybersecurity, and it's a framework that consists of multiple layers. You start with a very basic framework. The small is not really relevant, and that's really for micro-organizations. The actual base level is the basic. You have an important level, and you have an essential level. And they have a number of cybersecurity controls. These are non-technical controls. They are guidance, how to implement this, but they don't refer to actual standards or actual cryptographic protocols. It's just general. You could compare it a little bit with the controls of your Annex A. That's no coincidence because this framework is built on 4 existing, the most reference frameworks that we see in information security. We have our ISO 27001, so it's a part of this. We have our critical security controls, we have our cyber security framework, and we have done the OT security standard, the IEC 62443. So these 4 were used as a basis to develop this one. You see that the structure of this framework follows a bit the cybersecurity framework that we know from NIST. They start with the identify and know what you have, with the protect your inventory. Make sure that you can detect something, if you encounter something, that you can respond and that you can also recover when there is a major disruption. There is now a version 2.0 in development. It's, I think, expected in the coming months we will see an updated framework of the Siphon. It's important to state, it's no coincidence that the levels important and essential, they relate to the levels that we see in the NIS2 directive. Remember, you have 2 types. You have the important, you have the essential, but not per se as an essential entity, you should implement an essential level. By default, it is the case, but as an organization, you can make a valid statement, and that's what you see here. It's a risk assessment where you can defend yourself and say, okay, we are not actually facing so much risks. We can lower our risk level from essential to important. You have to justify this very well, because otherwise every organization would say, oh, we are not essential, we are maybe basic, that's enough as an assurance level. So you have to justify it with all these parameters. It's maybe small, but these are the different attack categories, these are the different actor types, and these 2 can give you some risk ID. This is still a theoretical exercise, of course, because if you are hacked, then no one will say, okay, who was it? So, okay, I have only 5 minutes left. How does it work now? We saw with ISO 27001, you have a certificate by an accreditation body, by a certification body. For the Siphon, you have 2 different types. If you're going for the essential level, so the most strict one, you need to go for certification similar to what we saw with ISO 27001. But if you only go till basic or important, we don't call it a certification, we call it a verification. And as you can see, the standard that's below it, so the requirements for us as a certification body, they are a bit different. In practice, you will see that the verification is a much lighter version of a certification audit. It's in fact a self-assessment that you as an organization will do, and we as a certification body will verify your self-assessment. So there is a huge difference between the basic important verification and the essential certification. Finally, some pitfalls to avoid when undergoing a certification from brand compliance or another certification body. This is what we see too much. It's not only from me, because I don't work that long at brand compliance, but also from my colleagues. Some pitfalls to avoid. First one is about risk management. We see companies struggle a lot with how to define risks. And that's sometimes because they use templates, they check with their competitors, they find some things online, and they have high-level general risks. And it's not at all related to their security controls. And that's something that's very important in the ISO 27001, but also in the other frameworks, you only implement controls because you have a certain risk. So there should be a clear link between this, and still organizations struggle with this. They have a highly defined risk, and then they have a lot of controls, and all these controls should be implemented, but They are not implemented because otherwise why is the risk still existing? Make it clear, make it very visual how your controls will reduce your risk. A second one is your lack of criteria. The very basic idea of an ISMS, of a management system, is to improve. But how you're going to improve if you're not defined what's good and what's bad? So KPIs are not SMART. SMART is an abbreviation, you know, specific, measurable, etc. We see that they want to improve cybersecurity awareness, but it's not measured how. So at a certain point, you cannot say this is okay, because they don't have clear criteria. Third pitfall that we see too many times, they are too ambitious. It's really something that they aim for a very long time. It's in their goals, personal goals, a bonus depends on it. They achieve the certificate, and at that point in time, it stops. It's a one-time effort. They are too ambitious. They monitor and measure everything. They think also they have to do it, and it's not achievable in the long run. So if we come back after 1 year, we see that a lot of these measures or a lot of activities already stopped, and that's a bit of a pity. You can gradually improve. Don't be too ambitious in the beginning. As I said, the certification is just a start. Start lightly and improve gradually based on what your organization can bear. Final one is the password management, and this is the other ones were more linked to the setup and the ISMS itself. This is more to the control. On the one hand, we see too many strict requirements. Don't use your last 20 passwords, don't use the obvious ones, don't use personal names in it. It has to be 20 characters and there is no single sign-on, so every system has a different password. What was the result? People will write it down. And not you as IT persons, you know how to do this. You use maybe your personal password manager, but in practice we see that people hate this. They are coming up with all kinds of excuses not to do these strict requirements. So that's final minute. The solution is then MFA, but then sometimes MFA is enforced too much. MFA should be everywhere and always applicable. And MFA is not black or white. MFA can be, if you are in a trusted network within your organization, you don't have to, for every login, use your MFA, because then at a certain point, your director will say, okay, let's abort this. It can be once every 30 days. Of course, if you're an untrusted network, then you should enforce it. So thinking this through is very important. Here you see the timeline. It's where I started with, the number of days that you should follow. You have the major deadline here, the first level that you should achieve. The second level is then the final deadline in 2027, more than 2 years to go. But if you have to go for an ISO certification, you already saw it's a bit of work. This is something that you can read later on. I put a source in here. It's from ENISA. They gave some idea in how mature every sector is. And everyone here is related to the digital sector or to the healthcare sector. Other sectors are more or less mature, you will see. Voilà, brush up on your security, and I will close up here just in time, I think. Thank you.